Awesome. Thank you for having us. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. Today we'll be talking a little bit about the career interest community, specifically STEM. So if you're not aware, in career and professional development services, we have a number of different career interest communities, also called CICs, that focus on different industries. And so today, Nick and I specifically specialize in STEM. So we do a lot of industry research. We do informational interviews with different professionals that work in STEM. We also work on the newsletter. So if you're not a part of the CIC and you are interested in STEM, I would definitely recommend joining on Handshake. And so we'll kind of jump in. I guess we can do objectives and then introductions. That's fine. So kind of what we'll review today in the presentation is, again, sort of a STEM overview. So STEM is a very broad, industry term. What does that really mean and what does it encompass? Some of the popular areas that people pursue in STEM, some tips for success as well as application tips, and then just conclude with some employer and industry highlights. If you do think of any other questions, like Brianne mentioned, please feel free to ask, and we'll sort of address all of those towards the end. So as mentioned, my name is Olivia Fallon. I work as a career and industry specialist with Career and Professional Development Services. I guess I'll say my major when I was in college. I got my Bachelor of Science in Human Services, and I got a Master of Education in Counselor Ed from Clemson University. And a fun fact for me would be that I still have never been to California, which is pretty lame. I've only lived in Arizona about a year, so I definitely want to travel a bit more. And I'll pass it over to you, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Nick Ferraro. I'm an assistant director for digital emerging career readiness within our department. My major, when I did my undergraduate at ASU, I did it in exercise and wellness, and then I got my master's in higher education and post-secondary educational leadership from NAU. And fun fact, oh gosh, let's see. Well, since we're sticking to traveling, I didn't go to the Grand Canyon until probably like 5 or 6 years ago, and I've lived in Arizona my whole life. So I think if you ever get a chance to go there, it's definitely fun.
No, for sure. Yeah, I've met some people that have never been, so that's pretty shocking. Cool. Thank you all for doing your introductions in the group chat. I see one of you has a Yorkie. That's awesome. Incoming graduate for Masters in Architecture. Dentistry, nice.
Wow.
You sew historical clothing. Wow, that's a really fun fact. Good stuff. Cool. So now I'll pass it over to Nick just to talk a little bit more about our roles, as professionals in career services.
Yeah, so our roles within our department is really to help you all prepare for your experiences in your next step, whatever that next step may be. Sometimes it's going to graduate school. Sometimes it's changing your major. I think most of the time it is looking for those internships and those jobs, but that's not what we're only here to help you with. And that's what we wanted to let you know is, we are here to help you review any materials that you may need for scholarships or jobs. But also, if you're interested in going to graduate school, changing your major, or just needing someone to talk about with what are your future goals and your plans, that's what we can help you with, and that's what we want to help you with. So just to let you know that we are here for you, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about those different components as far as if you are thinking about what STEM looks like for you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of what STEM is. I think when we often hear STEM, I think what happens is we typically automatically go to thinking of engineering only. And there's so much that falls under STEM. Sometimes even like the medical field falls under STEM. In our office, the medical kind of industry typically falls under a health and wellness area, but a good portion of it does fall under STEM. So, the STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And so that includes any careers that potentially fall into that. Especially with the science and the technology component, research positions and, wanting to work in a laboratory setting, working on samples and those things, that's all under STEM. All the way, to include like computer science and engineering and those things, but also mathematics, wanting to be maybe a teacher in the school district teaching math. That all falls under STEM. And so as you're thinking about being in the field of STEM, think broad and think widely, because there's a lot of different options that you have access to, that there's a lot of exciting careers out there.
Awesome. So one sort of caveat or thing we like to review anytime we talk about, your major exploration, maybe you're even a grad student, is that rarely does major automatically equal career. And it's kind of funny because within STEM, there are some majors that do, funny enough, equal a career. So for example, let's say you're in mechanical engineering, obviously you're going to pursue a full-time job where you're a mechanical engineer. But let's say you're in biology or math. Generally speaking, those majors don't always directly equal a career. And I think that's a common misconception, is that people get really stuck on the question, well, what can I do with my major? And in one sense, I do understand that question because you want to know what career prospects are out there. But in another sense, like, not to be cliche, but like the world is your oyster. Like you could go into a number of different careers because as Nick mentioned, so many of them overlap. You could, be a mathematics major and decide to go into teaching. So needless to say, there's a lot of different opportunities. And so typically this is kind of how we say, your job search is actually your career exploration actually looks like. So your major plus your experiences, plus your work values, plus your interests, your passion. And so kind of like as a quick example, when I was in undergrad, I was kind of in the boat of like, what do I want to do? Like I said, I got my Bachelor of Science in Human Services, and that's a very like counseling, social work degree focus. And it wasn't until I pursued internships, until I talked with actual professionals doing the jobs I wanted to do, that I realized maybe that's not the right route, but rather I'd work in higher ed. So it's hardly ever this very clean and cut process, but rather it takes some exploration and some life experiences really to help narrow that down. So kind of in conclusion with that, if you're in the boat where you don't know exactly what you want to do, that's totally normal. I feel like sometimes people just need to hear that that's okay. A lot of people don't know exactly what they want to do. The importance is just seeking out experiences that will help narrow that down.
So like Olivia had mentioned, your degree doesn't always align with what you're interested in going into. And like you mentioned, Olivia, yes, that is the case sometimes just for the mere fact of the certification component of it. But, the other thing you want to think about is if you will, maybe the field that you're interested in isn't necessarily in your degree area, is what are the skills and abilities that you're learning in your degree that you can bring to a variety of different careers? And what have you learned, and what can you highlight? And so this is why having a cover letter and having your resume up to date and organized in certain ways is to really highlight yourself in the best way possible, highlight your skills and abilities. But think about other things that make you happy, things that energize you, and think about the certain skill sets that you really want to focus on and use, whether that's technical skill sets or even those transferable skill sets such as communication, teamwork, collaboration, digital fluency, working with different cultures. So there's a lot of different components that really make you a complete package, is what I would like to say. And so oftentimes I'll hear students say, well, what are my options with this degree? And I like to let them know, like, well, let's take away the word options, because I think your options are really limited or open. Your options are unlimited as far as what you want to go into. It's more about what are you interested in, what do you need or have experiences, and that are going to make you the best fit for those positions too.
Alrighty, so just as a little activity, if you could post in the chat box the different STEM careers you're interested in. So maybe you're considering a number of different areas. Go ahead and post those just so we kind of have a better idea of, you know, who it is we're talking to. And I'll give you just a couple of seconds. Data science, cool. Medical lab technician or lab scientist, nice. And just a couple seconds more for any others that want to post. Architecture, cool. Mechanical engineer. Sweet. Lots of mechanical engineers, good stuff. Okay. Alrighty, so just some general trending careers in STEM. All of the different careers you all posted are have a great job outlook. I mean, I feel like if you want good job security, definitely pursue a career in STEM because I feel like they're always hiring. But what some of the top careers are software developers. So, you know, maybe you're very creative and interested in design and developing. This is a huge career right now. Additionally, mathematician, statistician, all those careers are also very much in demand in a number of different fields. Information security, so that as well as cybersecurity, that's one of the most in-demand careers currently. In fact, I want to say we have like tens of thousands of jobs that haven't been filled in cybersecurity. And off the top of my head, I think the starting salary is like $70,000. So if you are interested in that realm, that's a great area to pursue. And like I said, lots of job opportunities. Machine learning engineer, mechanical engineer. So that's awesome. Data scientist, systems architect, all those different ones. And I think this is Nick.
Yeah. So some tips for success as far as pursuing a career in STEM. One of the big things that we hear a bunch from employers, and Olivia and myself and some other members of our team are pretty consistently connecting with employers and really understanding what they look for in their applicants. And one thing that always comes through is the internship experience, that they love to see students who have internships experience. And, you know, I know as international students, you have access to do internships through a variety of different methods. And I know that it does depend on your visa status. And I would recommend talking to International Students and Scholar Center about that. But there's a few different components like OPT and CPT, which you may have heard about, that allows you to do internships. But doing an internship has such a great value to it, with all the way from the networking with employers to learning the skill sets, understanding the job, and potentially even giving those jobs after graduation. The other one, depending on what you're wanting to go into, is having research under your belt. So when we say research, we mean research in projects, but also doing your research about the different careers you're wanting to go into. Because a lot of the careers that you might be interested in can require very specific programs or certifications for you to have. And now, while you're getting your degree at ASU, those jobs may be looking for a little bit more. And so thinking about how do you learn outside of the classroom, which goes into the micro-credentialing component of things, programs like Udemy and edX, where they offer courses for you to learn how to do coding, and all these different other programs really can help you boost your resume, but also give you a cutting edge on your resume to be a successful applicant for those jobs. So those are things that, you know, we hear from employers all the time is, you know, they don't want to just see that learning in the classroom, where that's very important and very helpful. They do want to see, what have you been doing outside of the classroom? What projects have you been working on? Your personal projects, but along with your course projects. So highlighting your course projects and taking those course projects seriously in your classes, because you want to highlight these in a portfolio. And so that portfolio is what's going to allow you to highlight the great work that you've done, whether it's personal or academic, to an employer. And so they can physically see, oh, I see how you built out this code, or I see these are the type of laboratory equipment that you've used and the different types of processes that you've run. So it's important to have a portfolio. Our office can help you review your portfolio if that's something you're ever interested in. we would be happy to help you with that. A few other components, one is social networking, um, um, in the sense that, making those connections out in the field, utilizing websites like ASU Mentor Network or LinkedIn to make those connections, because the more connections that you have, the higher chances that you have of getting that internship or that job that you want. And which also falls into that mentorship component of when we say mentorship, it doesn't necessarily mean like a long-term mentor, which it absolutely can be that. I would say more of a flash mentorship, which maybe you connect with someone for 15 or 20 minutes, a professional in the field, and you're asking them questions about what they do on the day-to-day. What would they recommend? What advice do they have? Who else can you connect with? And that's a fabulous way to grow your personal and social network, and understanding the opportunities that are out there, but also make sure that with the jobs you're applying to, you understand exactly what they're looking for as well.
And another thing I'll add really quickly with internships or any like experiential learning opportunities, typically for the more competitive ones, you do want to apply about a year in advance. That's a really common question I get asked. And I worked with an international student. Well, I met with an international student, now professional, a couple months ago. She works for Google, which is really cool. And she was saying when she was getting her master's, she was applying to numerous positions at least a year in advance. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as well, because I have worked with some people that wait until, right close to summer to start applying, and better late than never, of course, but you definitely want to plan ahead for that.
Yeah.
So I'll just go over the career competencies. So if you haven't seen this list, essentially the National Association of Colleges and Employers, also called NACE, surveys employers throughout the United States each year and asks what are the top skills they're looking for in new candidates. And so this is the list that surfaced for 2019. And so we have problem solving and critical thinking, written and verbal communication, leadership, digital technology, career management, teamwork and collaboration, professionalism and work ethic, and global and intercultural fluency. And so many of these you probably already have, especially global and intercultural fluency, traveling, seeking education abroad. But just know these career competencies or transferable skills really transcends a number of different industries. And if you're ever preparing for an interview or thinking about, what's a basis of, what skills should I be working on to be more marketable, this is a good list to think about. So for example, leadership, if you don't feel like you've had a lot of leadership experiences, maybe seeking out clubs on campus where you can just pick up maybe even small roles, treasurer, vice president, that sort of thing. So if you just want to post in the chat box, oops, my bad. Post in the chat box a few different areas you've thought about getting involved in, such as clubs, internships to develop your professional skill set. And just to sort of give an example, when I was in college, my freshman year, I knew that my leadership skills were not the best. I think I kind of lacked confidence in public speaking and leading people, and I ended up becoming a resident assistant on campus, which I think at ASU they're called community assistants. And it was super terrifying, to be honest, to lead meetings and stuff like that, but it was really beneficial in developing those skills and also leading to other opportunities. Nick, is there anything you did in college that you feel like particularly helped you with your professional skill set?
Yeah, one thing that I focused on was part-time jobs. So I worked on campus part-time, which, by the way, as an international student, you do have access typically to work on campus. So I would definitely look at working on campus, but I was also part of a club, the Exercise and Wellness Club, where I was able to take a leadership opportunity. So, I think it's even looking at things like clubs that don't require, a lot of time. I mean, maybe a biweekly or weekly club meeting, but that's another great way to do networking, but also get your leadership experience as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned doing the part-time jobs, because I think sometimes people think like, oh, I have to become a president of a club to develop some of the skills, but that's really not the case. I've worked with companies, Stryker, for example, said like, we just want to see that you're being proactive, even if it's just doing part-time jobs. We realize some people don't have the luxury of doing, unpaid internships, but just doing something always makes you stand out. So I see someone mentioned becoming a team lead at work. That's excellent. That will definitely make you more marketable. That's great. Okay, and then I'll pass it over to Nick to talk about just some additional involvement.
Yeah, so I know we'd mentioned maybe, clubs and part-time jobs, but other things to think about in getting involved in building out those career competencies, for instance, like community service, so volunteering. Volunteering is one of those very valuable things that I think we often oversee, because with volunteering, it's not a lot of time commitment, but it's a good way to get involved in a field, but work towards something you're passionate about. And what we hear from employers is they love to see volunteering experience on a resume. Even if it was volunteering just for maybe a community organization that had nothing to do with the field, but just the fact that you were excited and committed to something, that you were willing to get involved, speaks a lot to them. Now, if it is in the field, that there's a lot of bonuses to that, but I think that if you have a passion about something, find a way to volunteer maybe once a month or something along those lines. That can be really helpful and a great resume builder. Something else to think about is professional organizations. So there's a lot of national and chapters out there related to pretty much any career field that you can think of. And oftentimes these professional organizations have student memberships, and they're very cheap. Sometimes, $10 or $15 to join for a year. I recommend looking at those to join. One, you can add them on your resume, but two, oftentimes you get access to their member benefits, which can include like research that they're doing as part of an organization, articles, jobs that they're posting, conferences to attend. So it's a wonderful way to get involved. I think those are a few things. If you have the opportunity to study abroad, work part-time, do an internship, I mean, those are going to be things that are going to have a lot of benefits to them, but something you'll need to research into to see if those opportunities are best fitting for you and your background. But yeah, definitely look at these great ways to build your resume, but also just build your personal professional skill sets, I think, most importantly.
Do you want to do this one, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. So some application tips when you're thinking about applying, whether it is through a resume, through an internship or a job, there's going to be a few components to think about. Typically within STEM, one of the first things that they're looking for is technical skills. Technical skills are usually one of the first things you highlight in your resume. You might have your name, your heading, you go into your education, and you go right into your technical skills, because those are sometimes really essential to complete that job and what is there. But the other component the skills that you want to highlight in your resume, and you're not going to say like communication skills per se, like under a skill section, but those soft skills. We hear from employers now, especially in the STEM field, that as much as they're looking for those technical skills, they're often also looking for those soft skills, because that is really what's going to set you apart from other applicants. That leadership experience, the being able to work on a team and collaborate, being able to communicate with clients or outside individuals, being successful there, because those are things that it's hard for an employer to teach you. They can teach you and help you expand your technical skills, but it's harder for them to really have you understand what professionalism is, understanding how to work on a team. So highlight those skill sets through your resume and your cover letter to your application. Something else is self-study. So I know we talked a little bit earlier, but learn outside of the classroom. Work on your own personal projects that you have interest in. Learn additional programs that you have interest in and highlight those, because again, that to the employer, that speaks a lot about how committed you are to that field. Something else is preparing for technical interview questions. So this really is dependent on the field that you're going into. I'll give a very strong example that we hear all the time, specific within like computer science and software engineering, is in their interviews, they have coding interview questions. So they will give you a code. They might ask you to figure out what's wrong with the code, fix the code, add this X component on the code, because they want to see how you are, how knowledgeable you are, how to use certain programs or work with different things. Other styles of technical interview questions could be they give you a scenario and ask you to ask you what you would do in that scenario. Some of the biggest parts of this is there might not always be a right or wrong answer, but how did you get from point A to point B? So your showing your thought process. Something else that we mentioned is creating that portfolio. Even if you think you don't need a portfolio, I would say keep a portfolio of all your class projects, personal projects that you've been working on, just so you have that. And if an employer were to ask, you can highlight it. Or it's something you can also just add on your LinkedIn so an employer can find that if you're applying through there, or just really shows of all the great things you've done, but how you can do them too. And then the last component, I think, and one of the biggest tips too, is making sure you're really researching that company that you're applying to. I know that sometimes you might apply to 50 to 50 plus internships. You still want to take that time to research about those organizations, understand what they're about, so you can customize your application, but also ensuring that that company is going to be a good fit for you. You have your own personal beliefs and passions, and so making sure that that company is really going to be a good fit. And then the other component that you really want to research too is, does that company potentially offer sponsorship? Does that company offer OPT and CPT positions? Because those are going to be really important, and getting those opportunities to work within the United States too.
Definitely. And I'm sure you'll go over this in another webinar, but on Handshake, you can actually filter out internships in companies that do sponsor OPT, CPT. So I would recommend using that resource as well. And then just one other thing I'll add in regards to researching company is, if you ever have an interview with a company, doing your research on like dress code, on their mission, vision, values, it's not uncommon for a company to say like, what research have you done? Just to know, like, have you done any? Because if you're passionate about the position, more than likely you're going to review their website, review their social media pages. When I worked at Clemson, I had a student that was interested in a huge tech company for an internship, and he came to the interview in a full suit. And that was one of the reasons they didn't hire him, because they were like, you didn't do any research on our company culture. We never dress up like this, which as a career advisor, that was kind of crazy for me to hear. But nonetheless, he went back the second year, I think he literally wore like a t-shirt and jeans and got the internship. So nonetheless, definitely do your research on the culture of the company as well. Just some industry trends. So one of the largest ones or biggest ones we hear regularly is artificial intelligence. Nick and I have the privilege of going to a ton of different STEM conferences each year, and that's one of the biggest hot topics, just because AI, I would say, is replacing a lot of jobs. It's being infused in a lot of jobs. So if you can seek out certifications in AI on Coursera, EDX, all those things, I think, are really beneficial regardless of your discipline, because I would say AI transcends a number of different disciplines, and machine learning as well. Again, cybersecurity demand, so that's huge right now, one of the most in-demand jobs in the United States. The utilization of drones, so I know Amazon is doing a soft launch in a city in North Carolina randomly to do one-day delivery, so that's a huge thing that I think we'll see more of in the coming years. Autonomous driving, so if you're not familiar, we actually have a startup here in Phoenix called Waymo, and basically they're launching autonomous driving vans. So if you ever see like the white Waymo vans and it has like this weird spinny thing on top, that's usually them doing test drives. Micro-credentialing, so this is becoming more popular. Maybe you're in, I don't know, just as an example, let's say you're not in engineering, but you're somewhat interested in that field. You can actually seek out certificates in engineering and kind of use it as a credential. And that's pretty common for like physics majors and a lot of those transferable majors. And then lastly, there's a big deficiency in STEM positions in education. So there's a huge need for STEM teachers. I've definitely worked with some professors at ASU that recommend, if you don't know exactly what you want to do, consider maybe teaching for a year to take that time to figure it out, because many charter schools, particularly in Arizona, don't require a lot of the same credentials for teaching. And just some employers that are hiring, like I mentioned, Waymo, Maxim Integrated, Basis Ed, Fox, and I'll pass it over to Nick if you have anything else to add with this.
Yeah. These are a few organizations who hire specifically within Arizona, but also in other states, and do offer like OPT and CPT opportunities. Something else that I didn't include on here was Snow Request Laboratories. I know that someone said they're interested in becoming like laboratory technician, so they are a big employer here in Arizona. But Basis Ed, if you are interested in education, they are a charter school system here in Arizona that is consistently hiring, especially for STEM positions. So something to think about if you haven't considered education before. It is something to think about as far as maybe part-time or internships in that field, just because it is a growing field and it is a great experience to get on your under your belt too.
Mm-hmm. And we always like to do, or in our presentations, with one thing that you will do in the next 24 hours that will put you on the path to success. And the sooner you start, the further you'll go. So now we'll open it up for any questions. And I saw we have one already about learning more about micro-credentialing. So you can get so micro-credentialing is essentially pursuing certificates in a number of different areas. ASU does offer some certificates in a number of their different majors. So like I said, engineering offers some certificates, sustainability offers some certificates, teaching. Another common route is to pursue certificates on Coursera. That's a website where you can essentially, how would I explain it? You kind of enroll in these little mini courses, and they're fairly inexpensive. Some of them are even free. And at the end of your completion, you get a certificate. There's also EDX and a number of other different websites. So another question, I have some experience in full stack development, but here we see data science and AI taking shape. So how to make a smooth transition and career towards data science and AI, prepare for job opportunities. Do you want to take on that one, Nick?
Yeah. So I know that you indicated you're in part of full stack development, which, by the way, if you are interested in data science or AI, they're definitely going to have full stack developers there in building out different platforms, as well as doing the different processes. So I would say there's even those specific positions within that field. But what I would recommend too is looking at job descriptions of these different fields and understanding what their different technical components they are needing, identifying which of those technical skills you have, but then identifying the gap that you may not have. And so working there of what courses or what areas can you get some of those skill sets into.
Yeah, no, that's a really great suggestion. And I would also recommend maybe seek out certificates in AI, consider, internships in either of those areas, and also just networking with professionals that are in some of those ideal roles that you're interested in. If you go on ASU's LinkedIn page, you can actually click on, if you scroll down, you'll see a button that says alumni, and it'll load 370,000 plus alumni on the platform that you can connect, message, and basically reach out and ask like, hey, how did you, land this position? What advice would you give to someone interested? I think that's always another great way to learn more about careers and also network. Could you please elaborate on portfolio building? Yeah, so there are a number of different free websites where you can build a portfolio. Some of the ones that come to the top of my head are like WordPress or Wix. And basically a portfolio is an online webpage for you to showcase some of the work you've done. So a typical portfolio has like About Me page, and it also has like tabs of some of the different projects you've done. So let's say you're into website development. Oftentimes people will have a portfolio that showcases some of the websites they've built. And then they'll then use the URL for their portfolio and put that on their resume so that, if an employer is looking at your document and wants to learn more about your experience, they can go to your portfolio and see some of the projects you've worked on. And like I said, these are especially beneficial if you're in a more visual field, if that makes sense. Another question. Oops, I scrolled to the very top. Sorry. What is the most looked for programming language for mechanical engineers by recruiters? Nick, do you want to take on that one?
I'm trying to think of a few. I know that one is definitely like R and Python. Those are a few that I've definitely heard of a few times. I think I'm not going to go too much more into that because there's quite a few. The other thing that I've seen is that it does vary depending on the employer and the type of role you're going to be in. So my recommendation is do research into those different roles and to those different employers and keep track of the different skill sets. Honestly, the job descriptions that you'll find in this area, they're very clear with the specific programs that they want you to know. So do your research into those, but also look at internships too, because internships are very transparent about what programs they're going to be teaching you, but what programs they might want you to have a good understanding into.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think anytime you can look, even if you're not job searching, obviously looking at a full-time position and just looking at the job description can be really helpful to see what it is they're requiring, because it definitely does vary. A lot of jobs that I want require a prereq of research. Do you have any tips on how to get experience in research through college? So my recommendation would be connecting with your professors, because oftentimes professors, particularly ones that are seeking out tenure, are already working on research projects. And that's going to be one of the easiest ways to, get sort of plugged into that. I'll say any student I've worked with that has participated in research in their college career has basically reached out to every professor they've ever had or are interested in learning more about and asking if they know of any research opportunities. So that would be my recommendation. I know there's also a website, I think it's pathwaystoscience.org, and they put, if you're in the sciences, and they post different fellowships and research opportunities as well. But first rule of thumb would definitely be reach out to your professors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if there are any other questions, feel free to post them. If not, that's totally fine. Well, as mentioned, if you do think of anything else, you're welcome to schedule an appointment with any of us or Nick and I on Handshake. You just literally log on to Handshake with your ASU Right, click on Career Center and schedule a new appointment if you ever want to review, your professional documents, the internship search, micro-credentialing, any of the topics we discussed. Great. Well, thank you all for having us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Nick and Olivia. Everyone have a great day.